Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to Code Stroll. This is React.js course and we are in part 2, which is single page application using vanilla JavaScript. We did talk about multi-page approach in our first part. If you haven't watched it, do take a look at that. So this single page approach is something like we have a browser and then we have a host where our code lives. Just give it a name, browser, and this is where our code is located. In this particular case, our code lives on our computer. So let's see what happens. The moment we enter an address in the address bar of a specific browser, it sends the request to that web address, and that refers to the host machine where the code lives. So it sends a request, and the host machine reverts it with a specific code that we have written for that web application, just like that. In multi-page application, we saw that the browser was sending repeated requests over and over again, and obviously it wasn't efficient at all. In this specific single-page approach, we're going to be ensuring that we write a code in a way that doesn't need or implement multi-page approach, which basically means that the browser won't be sending those repeated requests over and over again. It sends a request only once, and this host machine reverts it with a code that is sufficient to make that website function completely. So that's the approach we're going to be implementing, and let's just demonstrate this through our code. Like in the last video, we will be creating an empty folder. Just create it wherever you like. Give this a name, part 2. And we're going to be turning it open in Cursor Code Editor, Command Tab. Here we go. Let's close this out. So we have got this part 2 over here. And just write down index.html. Okay. So let's also turn this open in our Google Chrome. So this is where our website code is located. Now turn it open in Google Chrome, just like that. Okay, so right now, as you can see, it's just a blank screen we have because we haven't written any code at all. Let's just write the code, exclamation mark, hit enter. So we got this code over here. Let's change this document to project 2. And here in this body, we're going to be writing the structure of the code, which is basically similar to what we had written in part 1. So let's kick things off over here. Initially, we're going to be writing the navigation container, and we'll be implementing this A tag. Let's just write down home over here. So if you remember, href is just like the reference of the file that would refer this home tab to. In initial project, in the part 1 of this course, we had home, about, contact, 3 different individual HTML files over here that we were referring to. So do we want that same approach? No. So we want something different to implement over here. And that is where JavaScript will come into picture, because that will enable us to implement that single page approach over here. So this is like on click. We will be writing JavaScript right in this specific page, and you do not have to jump over to any other files. So that means we do not need to use href anymore. So let's just copy this, Shift, Option, down arrow. So here we're going to be writing about, and here we're going to be writing out contact. So let's just check Google Chrome over here, refresh. So we got this home, about, contact. Let's go back to our code over here. So let's just move out of navigation container and implement main container. So basically, we will be writing down home, about, contact, all in this main container. We simply had home in specific file, about in different file, and contact in different file in part one of this course. Since we are implementing single page approach, we have to write all three of those pages right over here. We're simply going to be using JavaScript to switch between those three pages and basically allowing users to see whatever user wants to see. If the user is on like home tab, user should see only the home tab, and these two tabs we should be able to hide the code related to these two tabs. All right, so let's implement that approach. But let me just go ahead and tell you this about something which is really important and related to HTML. Guys, HTML is like a backbone of any code that we write down in development. And since we are going to be writing home, about, and contact just like that, it'll be like home, about, and contact right in this single file in this main container. So how are we going to be structuring this site? Let's go ahead and check that out. So the moment you have multiple, tab or like pages in one container, like main container, you need to make sure that you have specific container for all three of them. Just like that, we will be having home container. Let's give it a name, home. Or let's just demonstrate this like that. And we have another one over here, okay. Oh, it's not working. Let's just take this off. Command D. Okay, so now it just works fine over here. So let's just give it a name, home. Home. This will be about. And this will be contact over here. This is how we're going to be structuring our code and HTML, to be precise. So inside home, we will be having a home page over here. And we're also going to be implementing some functionality over here. We'll be implementing a counter, which will be equal to 0. And just underneath that, we'll implement a button to make that counter dynamic. We'll have a button. Perfect. We'll have a button just like that. And in about page, we'll have simple heading, just like in the last project. We'll have about. And over here in contact, we'll have contact written over there. So one big container for home, one for about, and one for contact. These three containers will exist inside the big main container of our project. But another thing which you need to remember is, like, whenever you have like group of elements together, like in this case we have count and button together, we need to ensure that we package them in a separate container, separate inner container inside this big home container. So let's just mark it out. We need to have a separate container for this count and button over here. That's it. As you can see, we have navigation over here as well. These three elements are grouped together, and we have a separate container for that as navigation container. Just like this, we have these elements together, we need to have separate container for them as well to make our job easier whenever we're going to be implementing styling in this page and JavaScript in this page. You would get to know that how easy this separate container will make our life. So let's go ahead and write the code and the structure of our website over here. Let's kick things off with div. Inside this div, we need to write down h1, which will be like home page. And after that, we need to give a specific container, the inside container to that count and button. Let's just give it h3, as we don't want it to be as bold as h1 over here, right at the top. It should be a smaller one. So let's just give a span tag over here. So what span tag is, so let's just go back. So here we want this 0 to be dynamic. We don't want this to be staying at 0 over here. The moment we tap on this button, we want this to go up, depending on how many times we are tapping on this button over here. So we will be targeting this 0 and increasing this depending on the tapping of this button. So we'll need to create a separate container for this 0 to effectively target this whenever we're going to be implementing JavaScript over in this particular project. So let's go ahead and create a span container. Span is basically used to target one specific item inside a bigger item. So a bigger one is like h3, and inside big one, we are targeting this 0 over here. So now we got to be writing button over here. Okay. So we have button over here, and we just need to write down click to increment. Let's go ahead and take a look at Google Chrome, refresh. So here we go, we have this structure ready for our home page, as you can see. But whatever I said is just going out of the window over here because I can't see all, these elements grouped together closely, just like we have home, about, contact. This has some gap in there. So let's just try to experiment this by taking off h3 over here and replace it with div. And now I actually see the difference that we are getting. Or are we getting any difference or not? Refresh. Okay, so that did change, and you can see now these elements are like together, like real together. We have no space in between, and that's what we exactly want, because we want to do styling right from the scratch. We do not want any pre-default styling. And what that h3 demonstrated over here is that has got some pre-default styling in that h3 over there, which we obviously do not want. So let's go ahead and kick things off with contact. Let me just mention it in the command section, about page. So let's create that big container for about. Here we go. We have this big container for about, and we will be writing only a heading just to demonstrate that we are an about page. Again, let's just give it comments. This will be contact page, and let's just write down the container for that contact page as well. H1 is the heading. Okay, in caps over here. Contact page. So we have got all three of our pages ready over here. So you must be getting the hang of it already, that we got to be switching between all these three pages depending on the user behavior, whoever is accessing our website. If a user wants to stay on that home page, we'll hide both of these pages. If user wants to stay in about, we'll hide home and contact. And this what JavaScript enables us to do under the hood. So after this, since let's just check this out over here. Just like this, we have got everything up and running over here. So now we're going to be implementing styling for this particular structure that we have created over here. And to implement styling, I have something important to say over here, because how we are going to be implement the styling over here, since we need to place these navigation items in a proper manner. The home would come here, about would come, and contact specifically. And then we'll target this, we'll make this button more visually attractive, and then we'll target this, and we might go and target this about as well, this contact. So we will be targeting individual elements. So how are we going to be targeting those individual elements? The answer is we will be giving IDs or classes to specific containers to target individual elements. And that's what the job of IDs and targets is all about, IDs and classes is all about. We will be using those IDs and classes, even JavaScript as well. So they're going to become handy over here. So let's go ahead and give this home page initially. By the way, let me just give it a command over here that this is a home page. So let's just give this an ID over here. I have to give classes as well. Let's give it ID first. Will be home. And we'll be giving class as well. I'd like to give page active over here. You'll get the hang of everything a few moments later, but I'm sure you already have this understanding of why this ID and class is important, since we have to target these elements to style them effectively, and also will enable us to target these elements like the way I discussed that I want to target the 0, and that will add functionality, and JavaScript will help us to add that functionality. And how are we going to do that? We're going to be doing that through an ID or class. So let's kick things off and give this small container that we have inside this one big container home an ID and class as well. But for now, I just want to give it a class. Let's give it counter container. Here we go. So we have this container with specific class that we have given, okay? So now I think, do we need to give ID over here as well? Well, let's just go ahead and give this an ID to this count as well, okay? Right over here. Let's just give it a class. Predominantly, we'll be using class and CSS to style our page. We might flip it. We can also use class and CSS to target specific elements, but majority of times I'm going to be using class. In this project, like most of the times, or like all the times, I'm going to be using class to target items in HTML to style our page in a better way. So let's just give it counter display. Display over here. Do we need to give ID to span as well? Why not? Just give it an ID. Let's give it an ID this time. Like counter over here. Like most of the times, or like all the times, I'm going to be using class and to fetch my elements for CSS. For JavaScript, most of the times I'm going to be using ID to fetch 0 or like anything in this page. Anywhere if I give ID, just try to understand that I'm using it to enable JavaScript later in the project. So do we need to give button as well? Oh, let's just give a class over here. Counter button. Okay, so now what about this about? Let's just give it an ID. About. And let's just give it a class. You must be wondering that I'm giving both to this. I gave both to like home as well, home container. I'm giving both to this about container as well. That means I will have to fetch these elements for both CSS and JavaScript together. That's why I'm giving both ID and class to this about and contact over here. Let's give it again ID of contact, and let's give it a class of page over here. So I think we are all set over here, and let's just implement CSS, and we'll be just after title. Okay, do that make sense? I think so. Let's go ahead and check this out. Let's just give it a style over here. Okay. So right now we need to kick things off with counter container. Like this small container that we have got in here. Just kick things off with this small container because we want to make this attractive. So how do I target a specific class? Just with a dot, like counter. Container. So we have targeted this counter container over here, okay? So I'm going to give it a margin. By the way, let me just go ahead and brief you about what this margin and padding is going to be. So let's just take this off here. So margin, what this margin is all about, since we are targeting this count and button. So what margin will do, since, well, let's just create. Okay, just leave this. So what this margin is going to do over here, this will marginalize this count over here like this. Our elements are stacked just at the left end of this container. This will make sure that this enables us to like drag it just like that. As we can give as many margin as we'd like. It's just like a dimension that we have to give. It will just bring it more center, and that's what margin does to you. And when we talk about padding, so what padding does is, let me just demonstrate this over here. Let's say we have given this container test class. So this is like a container with a class test over here. So when I give padding to this test class container, this will make sure that this has padding all 4 sides of it. That's what padding means, right? It just safeguards your children inside this big container that we have got. So that means This is what all four sides, as you can see, this is the padding, and just depends on the dimensions, whatever I'm going to be giving. So basically, this is what padding and margin is all about. So let's just demonstrate this in our code. Let's just give it a margin. I think 20 will be good. Let's just give it a margin of 20 pixel. You could just play with it. And so let's just go ahead and see if this is getting implemented over here. Okay, did you see that? It just slide it way to, at the right side. And there is like another thing that you could do over here. Let's just give it a comma over here. Now we need to implement padding over here. Well, I just give it 20 pixel as well. Okay, semicolon needs to be here, not comma. And here, semicolon as well. So we have given padding. We have given padding to this like small container that we have inside. So let's just see what it should look like. Okay, so now we have this. Let's just demonstrate this through inspect. You click on inspect. Okay, perfect. It already does, I think. Okay, as you can see over here, you have this like padding implemented over here. If you see downwards as well, you have padding over there, your margin over there as well. You could just play with these settings over here. You could just turn this like 0 pixel. As you can see, it just changed back to the original settings. You could just play with it and it won't change your original values that you have in your code. This will stay intact. So the example of that is if you click refresh, boom, it just goes back to the original settings over here. So again, this is the container, the counter container. As you can see, the big container that we have on here. And this green that we have, this light orange that you got in there, that just implements this counter container. And this green that we have over here implements the padding. That just demonstrates the padding area that we have inside that big container, like the way we discussed over here. All four sides will have padding. So since this count and this button is the children of this bigger counter container that we have over there, it just safeguards that with that green padding that we have on there. It already has implemented margin as well, 20 pixel. So let's go ahead and kick things off with other elements. So padding is already there. Let me just give it a border. Border is going to be 2 pixel. And I will be giving solid. What do I mean by all of that? Just give me a sec. Okay. So what this is, well, this will make a border. So just like we have a counter container, let's just see what it creates for us. As you can see, just created a border for us. So border literally means that outside padding, we are just marking it out. That's it. 2 pixel solid. Solid means that you have the solid lines over there, which are like the dimensions of the border. As you can see, it's not dotted or something. There are other options like dotted and all. We are using just solid over here. And the color is like, this is the random color that I've picked over here. You can choose anything you like black, yellow, whatever. So this is the color that I'm using over here. So let's go ahead and do some other styling over here. So if I want to make these corners, like curved corners over here, that's like border radius. Border radius, here we go. It should be, let's just give it 8 pixel over here. Let's see how it looks like. As you can see those slight corner of this border. They are like curved. Perfect. So let's go ahead. What else we need to, let's do text align. It will make the text center. Let's go ahead and see this. So whatever text we had in this container, or like in the border, well, I can technically call this a container as well, because that's just demonstrating the counter container, which has a specific margin over here. And let's just play with it a bit. What if I take off this margin? As you can see, this light yellow that we see at the boundary over there is the margin. What if I take off this margin over here? Will it change? Let's just check this out. Here we go. As you just saw this, now we simply have this green marking over here. When we just move to this elements under counter container, we simply have this green over there. That means only padding exists. We have taken off margin. So what if I bring back the margin, like 20 pixel? Here we go. This just slides this container a bit on the right side, and we have that margin reinstated over here. Okay, I hope you got the hang of margin and padding over there. So what else do I want? I think that looks pretty good. Let's just style the button inside or the display as well. Let me just target counter display. Here we go. Counter display is there. Let's give it a font size of 2 REM. By the way, if you have any problem in getting these dimensions over there, just ask your AI friend, command plus L, what is REM and PX in CSS. It will return you with quite an in-depth answer. I use this all the time as well. You can use this yourself as well. So pretty handy, just try it out, it's free. So I have given this font size for 2 REM for this counter display. What is counter display? This is the count. And I've given this 2 REM over here. I'm gonna be giving some font weight as well. So let's just demonstrate this font size. Here we go, looking perfectly fine. We just implemented text align as well. It just got in the center. And now we are literally seeing this count as well, which has the font size increased a bit. So let's just give another settings to this counter display over here. Let's just give font weight. So font weight is going to be bold. Let's just see how it looks like. Let's just give it a color as well. Color. Give it a color. You can give any color. I'm going to give, by the way, you can just pick out any random colors like white, black. You'll get a bunch of options over here. Okay. So let's just demonstrate this, how it looks like. So it got a bit lighter. So let me just give margin. This time I'm going to give margin to the bottom. Why bottom? I just want some space in there. Since we are in counter display, and counter display, as you can see, represents this over here. You can play with it. This is the counter display. And we want difference, just see it on the right side. We want difference in between counter button and counter display. So let's just give a margin bottom because we want some margin at the bottom, some space at the bottom. So why just disturb any left side? We can target. If you write margin, just like the way we have, done in this counter container, a simple margin, like right at the bottom, right bottom over here, it just targets all four sides. So whenever we want to target any specific area, we give that a specific margin. Let's just go ahead and give it a margin bottom of 15 pixel. Refresh. Here we go. This looks like a good distance between all these elements together. So now if we go ahead and target the button and make it more appealing to your eyes, counter button over here. So this counter button will have a padding. Since we already know what padding is all about, 10 pixel. Let me just demonstrate or like introduce something new over here, 10 pixel and 20 pixel. Wow, I've given two dimensions to this, what this is all about. So the first dimension is about up and down. All right? So that's how you start it. The first dimension, whenever you see like two dimensions over there, the first one is about up and down, and the second one is about left and right over there, 10 and 20 pixel. Let's just see it, what it looks like. Okay, so up and down, as you can see, I've given a short or like smaller padding, and left and right, I've given a bigger one over here in the form of 20 pixel. So let's just write down font size over here. Let's just give it a font size of 1.1 or like just 1 REM. REM. REM is just basically higher than this pixel. Pixel is like points, just literally points, and REM is like more than this. You can do extreme depth, as I told you. Just ask this AI and will make you comfortable with this. Background color, just give it a background color, whatever. Let me just give a background color of like 007 BFF. Here we go. Let's just see how it looks like. Okay, so this is the way it looks like. And let's just give me a color. What this color means? This simply means the color of the text. Since we are in counter button, so we just want to give it a white color to our text inside this button. Let's just refresh. Okay, as you can see, it just changed the text color over here. We do not want any border, so let's just give it none over here. What this does, since we have this blackish border outside, refresh, we have no border. Let's just give border radius, make the corner border radius. Yeah, just make it slight curve, 5 pixel, how it looks like. Refresh. Okay, so this looks like this. You can see slight curve over there, look more attractive. So now this border radius is done. What else do we need? I think we're all good. Let's just demonstrate this. We can change the cursor. Let's just take cursor. Let's just give it a name, pointer. As you can see, we don't see cursor getting changed, but the moment we hit refresh, seem to be working right now. As you can see, whenever I hover over this button, it just changes back to the pointer. So let's just add more functionality to this button. I want to change its background color whenever I hover over it. So let's just move back to our code. And by the way, I just restarted my computer and it just started working. So counter button and colon, and then just write hover over here, curly brackets, and then what we want to change, background color. There we go. So I want to add something similar to the color that I already have over here, which is the original color of the button, something bluey over here. Just want to add some dark blue color so that it just stays similar to what we already have over here. So let's just add hash 0056D. Oh, may not be D over here. I think it's B. Okay. Okay, yes, we got it. So that's like similar to what we have in the original button. So refresh. As you can see, you just getting highlighted and the background color is just changing over there. So that's what we wanted to achieve. Let's just go back to code and make sure that we fix this navigation item over here, the navigation container that we have. We want to make it more attractive. Let's just go back to code and target the navigation container. So the navigation container is a standalone container, as you can see, unlike this div, what we have as home container, where a specific ID and class is applied. But this navigation, we can target it directly whenever we are trying to style this navigation. Target navigation container. There we go. This is the way we target navigation container. And here I'm going to be adding some padding. Let's add some padding, 10 pixel. Or let's just make sure 15 pixel. Let's see what we get. 15 pixel. So this is what we get with 15 pixel. Okay. And since we have to like target these A tags inside navigation, which are basically children of navigation container, so let's just target them individually. Nav A brackets. We are going to be targeting these individual tabs that we have got over here: home, about, contact. So let's just give some margin at the right over here, this way, this way, this way. So margin right, I would say. Let's just give it 15 pixel. And let's try checking it out. There we go. Looks neat. Let's make it cursor pointer. So let's just make it pointer. I have pointer. Here we go. We have pointer over here. So the next thing I would like to do over here, we are almost done, I guess. Yes, I think we are done. Maybe I can just change the color. color of the text, or let's just give some background color over here to this navigation container, just like we have this container over here. Let's just give some background to navigation container as well. Background color, hash. I'm using these hash. Don't get yourself overwhelmed by this, because you can use those straight colors like black, white, red. You'll get a bunch of options the moment you try to enter those colors. You can also pick this way. You just click on it, and you'll have a bunch of options over here. You can pick that. So let's just add some color. F8, F9, F, I think, A. Let's see what it gets. It's just a slight, okay, just a slight color, as we see over here. So I think we're done with our starting part over here. Yeah, I think we're done, and our page is looking decent enough, as you can see. But remember, there is like no functionality at the moment. We can't switch between tabs, about, contact. They're all apparently on the same page at the moment. And whenever we click over here, so the starting part is okay, but whenever we click over here, it's just not doing anything over here. So that means functionality is missing. And for that, we need to use JavaScript. We need to get the hang of JavaScript. So before we go ahead in this project, let me just refresh some basics related to JavaScript. So JavaScript, as we know, is the language that adds some functionality over it. Will make this entire website function properly. And moving forward, you will understand that how React.js is also built upon JavaScript. So JavaScript basics need to be like at the top of stack, and you must get the hang of JavaScript basics before moving to React.js or even Node.js as well. So it's going to be pretty handy. Let's go ahead and do this. So this is the list that I've prepared over here. We're going to be touching down upon variables straight up. What are variables? Well, they simply allow us to store data. And then we got to be talking about data types and functions and array, functions and argument. We'll make it quick and pretty clear. So let's just go ahead and do this. Let and const is the first thing that we need to do. The best part about JavaScript, you can just, let me just click something else over here and click on inspect. You can write JavaScript in this console over here. You do not need to have anything, any like specific compiler to run JavaScript. Just simply you can run it over here, and we will be doing that in Google Chrome browser. So let's go ahead and do this. Since this Google has got built-in compiler that interprets JavaScript to the language that browser understands, which is basically the machine language. It just translates the code to zeros and ones. So let's go ahead and try to understand what is let. So let's give a variable name as a. We can give any name. Let's for this particular moment, let's give it a. Let a is equal to 5. Hit enter. So when you get this undefined, that means your value has been accepted in this programming console. And let's just check it out. Let's write down a and hit enter. There we go. It returns this 5 explicitly. So that means we have got a variable which has got the value 5. So let's go ahead and try flipping the value of a over here. A is equal to 10. Will it allow us? Let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, yeah, I think it just allows us to change the value of a. So let's just write a again over here. Here we go, now we get 10. That means it allows us to change and flip the values of variable as well. So that's the power of this let variable. When you decide to use let, that means you can flip the values over. Let's close it out. So let's talk about other variable, which is const. Const refers to constant, and let's give it another name b because a is already allotted. That's b is equal to 5. Hit enter. Here we go. B is also stored as a constant, as the name indicates, but still, let's just try out to flip its value. B is equal to 10. Will it allow us? Let's go ahead and check it out. Here we go. We got the error. Assignment to constant variable is not allowed. This is unaccepted. So you cannot just flip the values of a variable that is defined with const. That's the norm in JavaScript. Always remember, we're going to be using it a lot. Let's delete this. What else we have to cover? The data types. So we know that we got the value of a as 10, and we declared let a is equal to like 5. So these are like numbers. We call them numbers as data types. Other than numbers, we have data type as let's say new variable. By the way, this is called camel casing. You have first word that is in lowercase, and the second word, it starts with the uppercase. So that's called camel casing, that gradually increases. And if you're going to have the third word, that will also kick things, that will also start with uppercase as well. So always remember, very handy and pretty useful. Always, this camel casing is like the standard that's used in industry. So new variable. So the moment you write double quotes over here, that means you are going to write strings. String is one of the data type. And even if you write like single quotes over here, just like that, that means you're also going to be writing string. Double quotes or single quotes, that means that is a string. Let's just write down ash. Here we go. This is a string. Let's just see what new variable returns. Enter new variable. There we go. It returns ash over here. So this is string, and there is one more frequent data type, which is a Boolean. Const, let's just say new type will be a Boolean. Let's just say true or false. This is another data type. As you see, you also have suggestions as well. There we go, new type. This is it, what we are getting, true. So other than true, we have false as another like value involved in this Boolean data type. Let's delete this one as well. What's next? Let's go ahead and pick array over here before moving to functions and method. So what's an array? Well, array is an ordered collection of values. What do I mean by ordered collection of values? Well, that simply means that, as you can see over here, it mentions collection. That means there are like a lot of values over here. And because initially, whenever we used to declare one variable, it could have been a number, like a is equal to 5. That used to be only one specific data. And it could have been a string as well, that name is equal to quotes, inside quotes, we used to write ash. So this is an individual value we are giving to one particular variable over here. But with array, it's like the collection of values. What do I mean by collection of values? Well, you can give multiple values. It could be a string, or it could be a number as well. So let's just go ahead and define an array over here. Let's just do it with const and give it a name, ARR. So we always start with square bracket and close it with square bracket. Whatever comes inside, that is array. So it could have multiple values like we stated earlier. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, can go all the way. And it could be a value of an array of string, like const string array. It could be like, let's write down ash, let's write down Sam. So this is the way you can store multiple values of one particular data type in an array over here, like the way one belongs to simple string and one belongs to number as well. So this is the way you do it, and how computer programming works with respect to arrays. So how basically the control works, let's just find out. So here we go. Let's say we have this ARR that we have created over here. So let's just divide it into various parts over here. That's it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is going to be like 5 allocated space over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just write it down. 1, could be 2, 3, 4. I will write down 5 over here. So as you can see, this is an array right now. Let's just write down const. This is the way it gets stored internally, but externally you got to define an array like this, just like we have done over here. So there is one more thing that you need to remember, and that is index. What's an index? Well, index is the location of this space allocated to these particular set of numbers behind the scenes in programming. So like this is an index which is 0. This comes out as 1. This comes out as 2. This is 3. And the end one is 4. Okay? So you represent these specific data with these indexes. What do I mean? That if we like pulling this out 3 from the specific ARR, we can pull this out by doing this, giving the name of the array, which is ARR, put the square brackets, and inside the square brackets just give out the index name. So this belongs to index 2. Here we go, and we'll have a value downwards which will be 3. So 3, we'll be able to pull out 3 over here. So just like that, we can pull out specific values. And there's another thing that I need to mention over here, and that is length. So just like that, ARR dot length. Let's just not go there yet. Let's just demonstrate this in code and see how we do over there. Let's close it out. Inspect. There we go. Const ARR square brackets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we give out 5 values in an array. Let's just try to hit enter and see. So that means it's like declared, and let's just try to find out ARR, hit enter. So here we go. So after hitting enter, this is what we get over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you see over there that there is like 5 written in parentheses over here. So what this 5 is, this is the length of this array. This just shows that this array has 5 items inside, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could have been strings, it could have been any other data type, and here the length would be mentioned over here. There's another way to pull out length as well. You know, when you move ahead in full stack development, and we'll be dealing with backends, you will have lots of bigger arrays that you will be working at, and you just can't that down. For that, if you want to pull out length of one specific array, what you will do, you will simply do ARR. Let's just assume that this is a very, very big data type, and we just can just pull out the values for with ourselves, and it's like belong to the backend. So how we can pull out the length of this specific array, hit enter, it will return you with the length of that specific array. It could have been 500, it could have been 200, and you just can't really count that down yourself, and this is the way the length would be out. So where we were, okay, I think gotta get it. So this is the way you call out length. Let's just move towards something else. ARR dot length is something that you can pull out like that. For this, the answer would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. So now when we talk about this index, and as we know that if you want to pull out a specific index, just give out the index in the brackets and it will pull out that specific index for you. So I think for now, let's just stick to arrays for this specific knowledge, and moving forward, we'll also cover looping with arrays as well. But since we do not have any knowledge about function yet, so let's just grab the basics of function. So what is function? Well, functions are like reusable block of code, and there are like two elements in a function. What is function? It's like a reusable code. That means if I have defined one specific function, that can be used by others. So you need to remember always remember this, that whenever you create or like define function, you're creating for others to use it. This first part is like create and define functions, and the second part is you call that function, which means use that function. You use that function and that function can be used by anyone. So these are like two attributes that you need to remember. You create a function and then you call the function, or let others call that function and use that function. That's a reusable code. Let's see how it gets done. Okay, move to our console over here. Let's delete everything off. So this is like you define a function or create a function. This is the keyword. You have to like write it. So, and after this, you give the name to one specific function. For now, let me just write no, R is capital because we are doing the camel casing, no return function. Give parentheses over here and then give curly braces. Shift and enter. If you enter, it will program this code and it will return an error straight away. So to escape that, you just do shift plus return or shift plus enter once, twice. And now put in closing curly brace over here. Take the control to the middle, hit tab, and here we are. So let's just make sure we hit enter without anything inside this block of code that we have. This block of code is where that you define the actual function, that what this function will do whenever anyone calls this function. So we have created this function, hit enter, returns undefined, which means it's processing or it's like processed. Let's just go ahead and try calling this function. How do you call this function or any function in the world? Well, take the name of the function, no return function. Here we go. The suggestion is there. You select that. And now to call that function, you put parentheses over there like that. That's it. You call this function, hit enter, returns undefined, because we have not defined anything inside this block of code that we have gotten over here. So that's why it has returned undefined. So what if you want to create a function that returns something, or let's say function that returns something, say hello. Here we go. Shift enter twice. Here I'm going to explicitly write down return keyword. As you can see, return. Let's just give string. In caps, write down hello. Exclamation, close the string. So this function returns with hello. Anyone who calls it, hello will be returned. Okay, hit enter. Now when I call this function, we all know how we call the function. Say hello. Here we go. We call the function. You always need to remember that put the parentheses on, very important. Hit enter, returns with hello over here. So that's like explicit return that we do over here. And there is like another way to write down the function. It's better that I introduce to you to that shorter way as well. So let's assume that I want to create this function in a different way. Let me just try giving a different way over here. Will that work? Okay, let's just say hi. It's equal to parentheses is equal to, and the arrow over here. And here, let's just write down simply quotes hello. That's it. This function is defined, and when you call this function, like say hi, hit parentheses, look, it returns with hello over here. The reason I could not use like say hello over here, because say hello is already there in the memory of this programming compiler. So we get returned with this hello shorter way, does the same thing, say hello, and returns out with hello over here. Well, you can use it, and always remember that whenever your code is like small enough to write down in just one line of code, you do not need to write down like return over here. It implicitly returns that hello, unlike over here. So that's something that you got to be remembering. Well, let's just make sure we close everything off over here. Now we're going to be talking about function that takes an argument. Function that takes an argument. What does that mean? So since we know that we have to think about that whenever we create or define any function, we always need to like think about the user who are going to be using the function, or like what functionality or like the piece of code that we want to provide to the world to use it. So just like the fact here, I wanted to create a function that said, okay, I've deleted it. I just wanted to create a function that said hello to everyone. I came out with that and did that. So what kind of function I want to create? So let's say I want to create a function that takes random number from users, and my function should return a multiple of 5. That means I should multiply that function with 5, or multiply that number with 5 in a return statement. let's write down here. I want to create a function that takes any random number from user, and the functionality that I want to add in that function is and multiply that function or that number I've taken from user with 5. So this is the function that I want to create. Let's just try to create that function over here. Function multiply by 5 parentheses, shift enter twice. So here, since I'm going to be allowing users to pass in any random number they feel like, they can give me any number. So what I need to put in definition over here is random number. This is the way how I define a number that takes argument from users. I can give any name to this. I can also give n over here just to keep it short. Let's just give it n. And here, what I'm going to return. So let's assume that the user has passed in one random number whenever user calls it, and I take that number as n, because let's assume that n is the number that the user is passing to us in the real time whenever anyone's going to call that function, and we want to return that number getting multiplied by 5, just like that. Hit enter. And here, when we go ahead and multiply by 5 over here, now since we have to pass in n over here, it expects us to pass one random number. So let me just give 5 over here. Hit enter, returns 25. So as a user, whenever I am using any specific function, I should be aware of that, what that function does. And if I'm aware of that, life is set. So this is how the function get returned, because you have given in the argument. It could have been multiply. Let's just reuse this function. Different user use this function and gives in an argument of 2000. What's the answer? It returns it with 10,000 over here. So we have discussed 3 types of functions over here. One that doesn't return anything, one that returns something, and one that takes argument from the user. So right now I just want to discuss something else over here as well. So this is a console that we are using right now. So as you can see, console, let's just go with that. So this console, when you put a dot over here and log, it has a function that calls log, and this is the way we call log function. And always remember that this log function will log the value to this console. That simply means that you're logging and trying to log the value to this console over here, and put something like ash, okay. So here we go, you got this, it just logged out that value, whatever you give inside this function of log. That means this is a dynamic function. It takes in an argument. It could take any argument. I could simply give a number, or I could simply give any value inside this, and it will log the value in the console that we are in right now. This is done as well. So I think we are all set to move towards a looping part. And let's just go ahead and move towards a loop part. So what is a loop? Well, what is a loop? A loop is just reusable kind of a logic that just returns same value over and over again. It just reuses that kind of looping part, as the name indicates, that it just sets you up for a code that you don't want to write and repeat over and over again, and it does the job on your behalf, and it just recreates that same functionality over and over again. That's a loop. And how do you do something like that? Let's just move towards code. That's the way you better understand it. So close everything off over here. Let's just give out an array, ARR, like it's already mentioned over here. Let's pick up that. So here, Shift Enter. I want to discuss looping over here. As you can see, it gives us an option. Click on it. Here we go. Don't get overwhelmed by it. It's very easy. Now you need to do one thing over here. As you can see, we have an index over here. We all know that index for 1 is 0. Kick things off at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go all the way to 4 over here. But before doing that, this is a bound that we have written over here. So what's the length of this array if I have to ask you, since we did initially, the length is simply 5. It just starts with array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the length of this array. It could have been a string over here, or we can also find out with this like Shift Enter, ARR dot length. We could have simply hit enter, and this will return with the length of the specific array over here. If the array is like too big, we can do that as well. So let me just write down 5 over here, or simply just give out ARR dot length. So that means 5 will be returned. So what is index lesser than array dot length over here, and that index plus plus over here? Well, you need to remember this. It's all about numbers in looping part. So you just simply play with the numbers. It just starts off with 0 over here, and it checks out whether 0 is like less than array dot length, which is 5. We know that 0 is less than, yes, a condition is satisfied, and then it moves towards this block of code that we have with these curly braces inside. What we want to do with that, let's just see what we want to do with that. We want to log console.log. What we want to log over here? Well, we want to log individual values of this array that we have in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Individually, we just want to log them off over here. So how can we log that? Since we know that this loop will start with 0 first, and this will check if 0 is like less than 5. We all know that this is 5 for this particular array, and this 0 will move inside this. Let me just demonstrate this over here. Let's just say if you have for loop over here, curly braces, parentheses, and we kick things off at let I can also flip the name of that index as I or any name. Let's keep it I for like short. And let I start at 0. Come, and no semicolon need to be there. Okay. I needs to be, and then it will check the condition over here whether I is less than the length of the array. You could give any number over here as well, but since we are just playing down with numbers, I just want to get you hang of this because we'll be doing that a lot. Again, semicolon over here. And here, we haven't discussed what this I++ does is, well, this I++ simply ensures that after 0, we move towards 1 as well. This will add a 1 to 0 over here, okay? So as we discussed, this is a block of code, and after this condition gets satisfied, we get access to 0. And with that 0, we can do anything. Now we know that I is 0, so let me just print out, or just simply use that value over here. We all know if we have to like pull out any specific value related to this array, we need to give that index in the square brackets. So let's just put the square brackets over here. Let me just pull out like since we have an access to I, let's just try I for now. This will return with 1, okay? Since this is a loop, once this 0 gets returned, or like the 0 gets done over here, we again move here, the control move here, and adds up 1 to 0. So now I isn't like 0 anymore. Remember, we are using I, so we can flip the value of I over here. So remember that I isn't 0 anymore. I has changed to 1. So now check the condition. If 1 is less than 5, which is yes, now here, since I have written over here like array, square brackets, I, so this I keeps changing on, and now I is 1. So that means it will print out the value 2 successively. And after that, this I will keep on increasing and will go towards the end of this array over here, and we'll just stop at 4. Remember, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Even 4 is condition satisfied, so that means the 4 moves in here in this block of code. So what is like array 4 over here? Array 4 is simply the last value of this array. So now it adds up 1 to that 4 and makes it 5. Now I is 5. Will that satisfy? No, it won't satisfy. That means loop get distorted, and this loop won't run anymore now. So this is not like a loop. I mean, you'll get the hang of it when you'll use it frequently, but we just play with numbers in the loop, and it just keeps on changing. In this block of code, we'll get specific numbers, and we have to like use those numbers to take advantage of that. So let's just move back to code. Let me just write down in square brackets. We know that I will keep changing. So let's just hit enter. Are we all set? I think everything here, we have written down everything perfectly fine. Let's just hit enter. Okay, so so did you get the error? I is not defined. We haven't used I over here, we have used index, so we have to like copy it all over again. Let's just delete it. Just flip it with index over here. Or you could just flip index with I up at the top. Now hit enter. Here we go. We got individual values of this ARR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is index 0. This is index 1, 2, 3, 4. Hope you understand this. Let's move ahead. So we have like done function as arguments. We have done array. So now we need to do something about like function as argument as well. There's like one interesting thing that you'd find out about function, which is like the basic pillar. I believe you'll be using that more frequently than you use any other stuff. That will be a function. that takes function as argument. That means we want users, anyone who uses our function, to give function as argument. Earlier, we talked about a function that expects users to pass in one specific number or like argument. It could be like one specific data type. But here, we're gonna be expecting users to just pass function as argument. Let's just see what that is gonna be about. Let's just move to code. So the moment we move to code, just turn this off. Let's just create a new array over here. New, or like array of numbers. And here, put the square brackets. And in the square bracket, let me just give out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 over here. Okay? So I have this array of numbers over here go all the way to 9. So let me just brief you about or break this out to you what I want to create right now. I want to create a function that just returns an array of multiples. Let's just say I want to return a table of 19 or like 9 or any number, whatever I feel like. What I'm going to be doing right now, just keep looking at it. That might baffle you initially, but you'll get the hang of it after like a couple of minutes. So let me just create down a function keyword, write down the name of the function. It can be map test. Don't get to the name, just understand the functionality. You'll get to know by the end of this video that why I've given this map test. Parentheses over here, square bracket, shift enter. So since I want my users, whoever call this function, to pass another function over inside. So expected function fn, let's just, you can see there is like no space, and I have used the uppercasing for the second word initials. That's how camel casing works. So here, what I'm going to be doing, let new array equal to empty array. So for now, I'm declaring this new array over here, which has like empty array, not giving any values. Hit shift enter, never hit enter, shift enter. So now what I'm going to be doing over here is I will literally be ensuring that I create a loop. What am I doing? You'll get to know. Let's pick out loop. Well, let's just write it ourselves. So let I is equal to 0 over here, semicolon, space, I needs to be less. Let me just give out the length of this particular array of numbers. So what to do if I have to like find out the length of this particular array? We know that, give out the name first, array of nums, and then hit length, okay, semicolon again, and then let the control increase this index by 1. So this double plus literally means that you are expecting index to go by 1. So we give the curly braces, shift enter, shift enter. Here we go. Hit tab. So since array is all about like playing with, looping is all about playing with the numbers. So I will be having an access to, so let's just assume the length of this. What will be the length of this? Well, simple. Since these number depicts the real length of this specific array, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we can also find out this length by just simply passing this function or like array.nums.length, and we'll get the length or actual length of this specific array over here. So here we will be having an access of 0 inside this block of code. What I want to do with that 0 first, let's just go inside. What I'm going to be doing here over here, since I want to return an array that is like multiple of like specific number, new. I know you might not just understand it first up, just keep coding with me and you'll get to know everything by the end of this. I have a clear objective that why I'm letting you do all this. This is going to be really handy. It's a new array over here. Dot. I want to push something in this array right now. And this push will be a function. I need to give in some arguments over here. And I will take this expected function over here and that expected function will ensure that I return. Very confusing, I know that. So this is crazy. What have I done over here? That is like an obvious question at this point in time. Well, I'm simply pushing out the value that will be returned by using this function. So what kind of function I expect users to pass me in this particular function? Because users are going to be calling this function like this. They will be calling it like this, map test. And inside this, they will be passing some function. So what kind of functions you're expecting users to pass in this parentheses over here? Well, I simply expect users to write down a function. It could be like any function. It could be a simple function that, just like in the last thing we discussed over here in this console, we discussed about multiply function, like multiply camel casing by 10 this time. So let's say if a user is creating this function and would return n into 10. I want user to create the functions like these on their own. Because if they create this function by their own, let's just go ahead. So I keep forgetting it. It's in a different tab over here. So that's fine. So if I create this function over here, that means any user who call this function like this, multiply by 10. Let's give any random number inside. Let me just pass 12 as an argument. So if I hit enter, this will return 120 over here. Okay. So if I have to like count down like complete table of 12 and I pass on the multiplication of like 1 to 9 numbers, I have to do that individually, like multiply by 10, 1, multiply by 10, and then parentheses 2, 3, 4, 5. That's like pretty annoying. And with this array, what I want to achieve over here, that I literally want to pass an array, a new array that returns well the multiplication of any specific number that the user passed me whenever user calls it out. So you'll get to know when we will achieve the desired objective of this particular function. But for now, shift enter and return this new array over here. Just like that. So now I think we can go ahead and hit enter. So if hit enter, let's just try to call this function map test, parentheses. Now here we know the shorter version of passing the function. We discussed that. Let's just refresh. We know how we can write down the function parentheses equal to arrow, and we can simply return, like, let's assume that you want to give users to give us like any specific number, and here I'll be multiplying that number with 19 over here. Okay, so this is equivalent to the function that we will create, like this function multiply by 19, takes in a number, expecting users to give me a number whenever they're going to call this. Always think about that, what the users will do. And as a user, you must always think about what this function will do. So since we are creating it out, always think about what the users will give. Let's suppose if they give out any random number, what do you want to do with that? And into 19 over here. So these are like two different functions, perform the same. Okay, I need to write down return over here. We don't even need to write return over here because this is an implicit return. But here we need to write down and mention that return explicitly. If you don't do that, that will return undefined. So these two are like same block of code, will function exactly similar, but look how small is this and how big is this. We will be using it more frequently, but definitely we will be using this whenever, just depending on the use cases. So map test, I'm going to pass in a function over here. So I know as a user, I've studied this map test function. I need to define or create a function inside this function that takes in a number and multiplies that number, give me equal to arrow over here, that multiplies that n with 19 over here. Did you see that? We already have the light sort of not explicitly mentioned over here. We haven't even pressed enter. It just returned on the table related to 19 over here. 19, 38, 57, 76. So you have that complete table of 9 till 9 over here. So what if I want a different multiple over here? It could be n of 5, we got the 5, and 50, we got the multiples of 50 over here. So this is a function that we are passing inside. We are creating a new function inside this function that already exists because we know what exactly this function will do. So that's something that you should bring that in your attitude while moving forward in your software development journey, because you'll be dealing with a lot of these functions in backend calls and stuff like that. So you must be well versed with every function, whatever that function does. So Let's just hit enter over here. So we get returned by this, and we can give any function because this function is dynamic. So let me just go ahead and give the name of this array that we have right at the top. And what I'm going to be doing over here, this array of numbers have an access to like map function. How did I find out? Well, you can do some interesting things over here. Like if I just give the array of nums, like name of this array over here, hit enter. And here we have, as you can see, this is the length in parentheses. Just need to tap on this play button over here. This will go down, clearly mention this is the index, and this is exactly the value that belongs to that particular index. And you click on this prototype, and here we go, we get wide range of functionality related to this particular array that we have. It's by default that comes with the language that's written under the hood. Here we go. Here we have this access to this map function by default. So that means I can use this map function on this particular, on this particular array. It is applicable on every array, whatever we're going to be declaring over here. Tomorrow it could be like a very big array of different strings of the addresses or your home address, and it could have different very big length over here, like 50, 100, 200, and we will still have access to map function. So let's just wrap this up over here. So since we have an access to that map function, what that map function does, well, let me just demonstrate that over here. Dot, you'll have an access to map. Here we go, we got the suggestion as well. So in this map function, we need to pass in another function. What this map function does, let me just demonstrate this. Let's just pass in another function over here. So this map function, what this map function will do, will give you an access to these individual values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Under the hood, this map function is written exactly the same way I have created this dummy map function over here. Map test, exactly the same. Just like that, we have access to like all the indexes because we have given this like particular array length over here. So we have access to 0, we have access to 1, 2 index, 3 index, 4 index, and go all the way to like 8 index over here. So just like that, this map function will give you access to all the indexes of this array of nums that we have over here right at the top. We'll give you all the values over here. Now, the onus of using those values remains with us. What we want to do with those values, we can simply go ahead. Let's just assume that the first value, what we're going to be getting out, let's just give out a name as n. And what we want to do with that value, this is how you create a function. What we want to do with that value, it totally depends on us. I could simply go ahead and say that I want that value to get multiplied by 50. And as you can see, the moment I press n, it just gives you the exact same values. First time, 1 will drop in. Another time, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 will drop in successively. So I want to multiply that with 19 over here, like the way I've done it above, or like 50, I did that. Hit enter, we get returned with the same code result that we got over here. So I know this might be overwhelming, but hit the pause button, take the video back, go back to the video. I just wanted to give you the hang of these function that takes function as argument. So whenever you use that function, you must be well versed with the idea that what that function is expecting you to do, what kind of function that is expected out of you to give to that function. So you must have that clarity in your head that I'm gonna write down some function inside and what that function is taking and what I want to return. That's something that you should be having in your head. Well, I think we are done with this. Just a fantastic piece. I just liked it and I just wanted to share it over with you. And over here, let me just rephrase that. If you have any array over here, like any dummy array, if I use map function, I should be, I should have absolute clarity without any doubt that whenever I'm using map function, that means this map function is using a looping functionality under the hood that we just used it over here explicitly. And this map function will give us access to every index related to this array, every index. And what we want to do with that, that totally depends on us. And you might just have a doubt over here, will we have an access to like 0, 1, 2, 3, exactly the same way as we got it over here? You might get confused because we are using numbers over here and this number is just like literally clashing with like length over here as well. But you do not need to worry about it. You just need to be assured of the fact that if that array is like of strings, like ash, like Tim over here, quote, and like Ron. So this is what we have. So that means I will have an access to Ash, Tim, Ron. Now it totally depends on me what I want to do with those values. Do I want to say hello Ash, hello Tim, hello Ron? I can define a specific function related to that. Okay, so we must know what kind of value that we are going to be getting, and then we need to devise a function based on it. So you can also say this whenever you like define a function. You define a function in a manner that you already know that what kind of value the user will pass over to you. Okay, let me just say that I'm thinking that someone will pass on with string, just like random string, or I simply, what I do with that string now totally depends on me, and I can simply say return a simple like this, the exact same string again all over again. So we will have the exact same string whatever user has passed over to us. So whenever you're creating a function, you need to think about user. What is the user is going to give you? Here, we need to think about what this array is giving us. This array is giving you the value of individual elements starting from the 0 index. This is 0 index. This is going to be like 1, and this is going to be like 2 inside. They run loop inside this map function, and we just get access to all 3 of that, or whatever the number of the array is, length of the array is. We get access to every element. Now it just depends on us what we want to use that. I hope there is like no doubt about this. If you have any doubts, just let me know in the comment section. There'll be something which I'll be happy to answer. I think I've given it all in this explanation. I just did a research over on this, and I just found out this is like the best way to get you the hang of these. By the way, these are like arrow functions. We call them as arrow functions. Pretty handy, as we have already seen it. We call them as arrow functions. We will use it all the time whenever we're going to be moving forward towards a full stack project. I think we have no doubts over here. Some days ago when I was like telling this to some of my random uh, like students, so they were like absolutely baffled at what this map function does. So I just came out with this. I should write down what internally map function does. And if you get the hang of it, which is kind of pretty easy, you need to get the hang of for loop first, and which I discussed in the initial part of the video, and you will absolutely get the hang of it without a doubt. And here we will get access to every element of the array. Just depends on us what we want to use with that, the element. So with this, let's just move ahead, and we have just one topic that is left to discuss, which is like objects. Objects, what is an object? What is an object? There we go. Object is also one of the data types, and it's mutable. Mutable just means that I can flip its values. Flip its values, just like the building block for like basic building block in any programming language, in particular like JavaScript. This is like the basic building block. And how you define the object, you have like curly brackets all the way down, close it. And object is like a combination of key value pairs. What's like the key? Let's just define a function over here, or like an object over here. Okay, where are the curly braces, man? Okay, let person equal to, put the curly braces on again, move the control over here. So here, the key that I want to give is first name, colon. First name could be Ash. Last name could be Lee. Okay, so here we need to put an array because these are like different key value, and this is key value as well. This key has got this value, key got this value over here. So this is the way you define an object, and we'll have a bunch of data over here, and you will be dealing with massive amount of objects while moving forward. So basically, this is the way you define it. And if you want to get the value of like specific element in the object, you go dot, and then you give the key of that particular element that you want to pull out. First name, and you hit enter, it will return you with Ash over here. Okay, so this is what you're gonna be having. We will be having like bigger objects while moving forward. And you can also give like pass down functions over here. Let's just multiply by 5 over here, just like that. You can give out the function over here that will. So since we are creating a function, always think about what the user is going to return to. Let's just assume that the user return us some, or like give us some number, or pass on some numbers as an argument. So what we want to do with that number, since we have given a name over here, multiply by 5 over here. Let's just multiply by 5. So this is what I'm going to use with that number that the user is going to pass me. And how we can access it? Simple. We can simply access that person dot multiply by 5, and we need to pass an argument, whoever is going to pass that. So this is like an object, pretty handy in libraries and in like normal programming language. You got to be dealing with that because under the hood, everything is an object. Since this is an object programming oriented language, everything is an object. So this object is going to be pretty handy. And how we can access the values or like related to object, we can access the values by giving the key names. The first name will return ash, multiply by 5, and we give pass on some arguments. We'll return it with, the number which it will be multiplied by 5. So I think we are done with like basic JavaScript, and now let's just move towards our project back where we will be discussing about how to make that web application more interactive and add some dynamic functionality to that. As we got in over here, we want to add some functionality over here. Just get that 0 converted to the number as depending on how many times we just tap on this click to increment over here. And we also want to do a couple of things over here that whenever we are like on a home page, I want to hide out this about and contact, and same goes on with about and contact page as well. So let's kick things off with that. Here we go. We are in our code right now for our project. So let's go ahead and try to add some JavaScript over here. And the way to add JavaScript is to simply add after this main tag, the main tag, the closure, this is the closure of the main tag. You need to write script over here. You got the options. You just click on this, the first one that we have. So this is like the script tag. As a scripting language, we need to write JavaScript in this particular script tag over here. So why the JavaScript is like in the end? Because we want our web page in our project, which is this one, to load up initially, and we don't want any intervention of like JavaScript, and we just want to load up all the CSS files and stuff like that. All the HTML styling needs to load up before the JavaScript comes into the picture. So here we go. Now the first thing we will be doing in JavaScript, we will be taking care of the counter button. We want this counter to function. Whenever we press on it, we want to increment and get it displayed over there. So let's go ahead. As you can see, we already got in there like on click. So what we can do over here, we need to create a function. Whenever this button gets tapped, we want this on click to fire up, and this function needs to be called. Let's just give the name. We are going to be creating this function. This is increment counter. This is the function that will be called whenever this button gets tapped. And this is the function that we will create first up. Hit the tab, and we will be creating this function over here, increment counter. So here we go. We got this function. This function will be called the moment we tap on this particular button over here. Do you want to check this out? Let's go ahead and try to introspect our function as well. As you remember, whenever we, the time we discussed about that console and the function in JavaScript, we discussed about that one function which said console.log. And this was basically there to put things into the console. It was literally asking you to log the things into the console. So you know how we call the function, put the parentheses over there. So whatever you just enter inside the parentheses over there will get logged to the console. So by doing this over here, what I'm just doing that whenever this button gets tapped, I want something to log to the console. So let's just put some strings over here, and inside this we can say that like button is working. So this is what we had. This will get fired up, and this has this to say over here. So let's go ahead and test it out over here and see if our button is working. Let's just go into the console, hit the refresh. Let's see. As you can see, this just got over here, the button is working. This is how you can test your JavaScript and your functionality part in any of your project. So let's delete it off, get back to elements, and let's go back to our code since we have demonstrated that our code is working. And let's just put the real logic over here to change up the display as per the button gets tapped. So what we want to do over here, let's just do one thing. Even before this function, I want to declare a variable over here. And you notice that over here, this 0 will keep changing over and over, and just literally depends on this, the tapping on the function. So we discuss about a variable that whenever we give a variable or declare a variable with like this let, we can flip the values around. So that is exactly what we need over there. Let's declare a variable with a counter name, and that is exactly what we have done over here. So when we move downwards, we simply, inside the function, we need to increment this by 1. What we can simply do over here, so this plus plus represents that this count will go up by 1. This plus plus simply represents that, or you could just simply do this like counter plus 1. You can do that as well, but plus plus is a bit handy. And this is what you'll see in most of the code bases as well. So this will be incremented by 1. And when you go downwards, so here what we need to do is we need to have some functionality over here. And since we need to flip the values and display it over there, so how we can link this counter to this variable that we got over here and literally display it right now after this column that we have over here. So the next thing we got to be doing over here is write document. What is document? Well, let's just go ahead to our console and try to see what is document. Document. Hit enter. Here we go. When you click on it, and you will see the exact same page over here. You know, this is, as you can see, the moment I just tap on this, not just tap, but just hover over this HTML, this entire page gets highlighted over here. So that means this document is the page that we have over here. The exact same page is the document that we have. So that's like JavaScript or the browser provides you by default. This document is like a big object. Let's just go ahead and clarify if this is an object or not. Type of document. As you can see down there, it's an object. So this object basically is like a big object that we have right now over here, just like this, const document. You know, we have various kinds of variables over here, and some variables are functions. Some variables could be, you know, just literally be an object as well, or like an array of objects as well. So as like we discussed, if you remember that it's just the key value pair in every object, have a key, and that key has specific value. You put down a comma over here, and then you can write down the next key. So a key could be anything like different variables, functions, objects, arrays inside this one big document object. So let's just go back to our code over here. As I said, this document object contains so many functions and different kind of things that we can manipulate this entire page using this document model, and that's why this model is called document object manipulation. This is called DOM manipulation, you can say. So we literally just manipulate this whatever we can see over here on this page using the document model, because we just got the hang of this document object over here. The moment we just tapped on it, it just highlighted this entire page, so that confirms this document just covers and wraps this entire page. So let's just go back to our code. Since we have to like manipulate this like 0 over here, adds functionality, so let's go ahead and do that. There is like by default function we have in document object, and you can see the moment I enter get, we get a range of options over here. So we need to go with get element. Here we go, get element by ID. And what get element by ID will do, this is a function by the way, and we haven't called the function. As you can see, we haven't put the parentheses over there. So what we need to do over here is we literally need to fetch this ID of 0 and just simply manipulate that with our new count variable that we have changed up. So what we can do, we can just simply just scroll up. As you can see over here, we have this counter container ID given to this span tag, which is like 0 over here. And we need to find out where is the counter ID that we gave in. Did we give in any counter ID? That is something we need to find out over here. This is counter container, this is counter display, and this is counter container again. But that doesn't seem right over here. I think we just messed up. We need to give this ID something different. It just can't be same. So simply put counter over here. And this one will be that counter container, which is like the big box that we have. And just simply, let's just demonstrate this. Go back to elements, refresh. So go back to body over here. Go back to main tag. So let's just try to go through each container. So this is like the home container, one big home container that we got. Click on it. This will take you to like home page that we have written. And this will go to like counter container that we have over here. And when we just tap on it, this is counter display. And when we go ahead and tap on it again, this is the counter. As you can see, it just highlights the 0 over there. We need to fetch this ID because we need to change it up depending on the tapping on the button. So let's go ahead and try to fetch this counter over here. So here, put the parentheses over here and give the ID name under the quotes. So we put the quotes and write down counter. There we go. So what this will do, this function will fetch that 0 and will get the access to that like span tag that we have put in over here. We deliberately put that span tag over here so that we can give it an ID and counter the specific number that we got in over here. And now let's just go ahead. And now we need to get text content over here. So what is text content? Well, this will give us the access to this 0 over here. And by putting text content, we can target this 0 over here. So, but it's important to recognize that what this will return, let's just try to put the value in the console, that document.element by ID, what this function returns to us. Let's just go ahead and see that out. And to see that, we can log this value in the console. Console.log over here. So here we go. Hit refresh. Go back to console. So what we can do is, let's just go ahead. As you can see, it just simply fetches out that ID counter that we wanted over here. Get element by ID counter. ID counter, it just displays the same span tag over there. So this just fetches out the exact same thing over there. And what this text content will do, let's just remove the console. So what this text content will do, and by the way, why we are applying text content and how we could apply that text content over here, well, you need to understand that JavaScript is like an object-oriented language. Eventually, everything down the road is an object. Even the span tag that we have over here is eventually an object under the hood. That's what document object manipulation does to you. And it just switches the object, and that object has got different variables, and text content is like one of those variables that we have in that document big object, or like the span tag, which is eventually an object. So if I basically have to explain this over here, so that object could be like anything, like any name, or like dummy object. And here, like text content is one of the properties of that dummy content. We have this like object over here. And with this text content, as you can see, we can flip its values over here. This text content can keep like changing over and over. So that means this text content has got let variable over there, because we can just flip it over and over again. We haven't given any initial value, so that means it can just flip it over and over. And that's what we would like to do, because the 0 will keep changing. Let's just give it a value equal to counter, the variable that we have over here. So what this will do is, the moment we tap on that button for the first time, this will go 1, because we have this logic over here. Another time goes to 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's what's going to happen. And let's just go ahead and demonstrate this over here. Hit the refresh. Click to increment. Here we go. As you can see, it's just constantly getting updated over there. So that's the magic of like document. You can access anything on this page, as per the ID, because we have given ID to all the elements that whatever we see over there, and we can fetch them and flip their values around. That's what document object manipulation is all about. So it's working. Let's just move to another section of our code, which will be related to the pages. Now we want to interchange the page over there, and we want to see one specific page, whatever and wherever we'd like to be. Whenever we click on about, we don't want to see the content related to like home and content, and it just applies to all other pages as well. So let's go ahead, hit enter. So here, what I'm going to be writing down, I'm going to be giving one function to these on clicks, because whenever anyone's going to tap on like about, contact, and home, we want specific function to get fired up, and that function we will be writing it over here. So let's just write down another function. This function will be show page over here. I'll just get curly brackets. So here I want, because we know that function has like two attributes and there are like two phases in function lifecycle. The first one is when you create a function, you literally define the function, that what that function will do exactly. And the another lifecycle is when you call that function. So whenever anyone calls this function, or we want user to put in a page ID, let's just give it a variable, the page ID over here. And remember, we can give any variable over here, any name. It's just solely depend on us, what we want to give over here. So let's just go inside the function right now. Hit tab, const pages. Again, I want to get the access to that document object, that big object, which is literally this entire page, visually whatever we see over there. So here, query selector all. I want this function over here. And what this function will do, well, this function, as we scroll up over here, so whenever you just write down this function query selector all, this just targets one class. And as you can see, this contact, about, and right at the top, this home page have got one thing in common, and what's that? We have page. Even though this is like page active, but still it's just like we have page as a common feature in these like three elements that we have in place over there. They're like three big containers. So we are literally targeting these three containers with that one page written over here. So that's the function, and we are just passing this argument page into that function. So let's just go ahead and let me just log this into the console so that we can introspect what exactly this pages is all about and what this pages will give to us. So here you can see I just put them in the variable over here. Whatever this function is going to be returning us, we will be getting that into this pages, and simply we are logging that pages into our console over here. So let's go ahead, refresh. So I can hit anything over here, but remember, we need to just swap this empty on clicks with this show page over here. The show page ID, we need to just swap them up over here. So how we can do that? Well, you can do that with like literally giving us the show page. Let's just give out show page. And inside, what we can do, we can, or like for the moment, let's just keep it empty, because I think this is gonna get logged even before, yeah, even without that as well. Let's go ahead and check that out. Refresh, and if I click on about, nothing happens. Okay, happens because I gave to that home over here, and this will happen. As you can see, we have this node list over there. Well, this node list seems like an array over here. Let's just go ahead and check this out. This node list, and if you click over here, it has a range of like functions that you can use with this node list that we have over here. So the curious question at this point of time is, you can ask your AI companion that what is node list by pressing on that command plus L option. What is node list over here? You'll have an interesting answer to that. Do check that out. So node list, just for the information, is not exactly an array, but behaves like an array. That just like we had an array over there in that map test function. If you remember, we checked that out. That map function is exactly a function that is given to us by default whenever we like access any array. We get that function as part of that big array package that we have. So just like that, in this like node list, we are getting access to a range of functions over here, and including this for each, which literally behaves similar to that map function that we had in array that we discussed. So moving back to our code, let me just replace all of them over here with show page. Parentheses. So show page, parentheses over here. By the way, we can also give some IDs over here because we know this home container have an ID called home. So we can give that, put the quotes. By the way, double quotes and single quote, they're all same. You can give, but always remember that you got to keep up the flow steady. If you're giving like small quotes inside, just keep continuing with that small quotes. We have home, and then we can give about and contact. It'll be like about, and here we can write down contact over here. So now if you refresh, you click on either of the tabs over here, it returns node list. Returns node list, returns node list. So why this is returning node list? Because we have, since we are firing this function as we have over here, the moment we hit on tabs, the function gets fired up and we are logging that over here. This query selector all just selects all the 3 containers that we have over there, and it just packages them in one node list. So if I try to explain it over here, so the moment I write down this like document dot query selector all over here with any specific ID, and it just, so let's just write that on the ID page. So what is returned is this will return you this node list that we have over here. So this node list is literally the 3 containers, because this page will return you all those 3 containers that we got in over here. And why this one is getting returned? Because this has page active. This isn't like this. So if this would have been like this would have not returned. But since we have like space over here, so it just picks up that first initial or the first word over here and also returns you with the home container as well. So all these 3 things gets packaged into one node list, which is almost an array, but not exactly an array. You'll get the hang of it when you ask your AI companion about this. So here, the container 1, and we have container 2, and we have container 3 over here. So all these 3 containers are like packaged together. And now we remember this, that it's just simple. You know, the thing we discussed in that array section when we were discussing JavaScript basics, we got the hang of this array section where we knew that we get access to that map function. And what that map function does is will give you access to like individual elements of this specific array on which you're applying this map function. So similar to that, since we are using node list, if we use for each over here, which we are going to be using in code, we are literally getting access to every element inside this node list, which is similar to array in this for each. And by that logic, we need to write down a function inside this for each, which deals with individual, the containers that we have over here. So let's go ahead and try doing that. Let's just remove this console.log. So here, pages, we're getting the access of all these three node lists because we know that node list lives in this variable that we have created. So we are getting the access to that node list. So now we know that we can use for each, just like we used map function for the array. And here, so if you are just seeing this at the top, you can see inside the parentheses, it expects a callback function. So the function that we write inside the parentheses, it's a callback function. So let's just go ahead and give a callback function over here. So since we know that we will be getting access to the individual element in this pages, and we know that functions they've got like two. If I go ahead and try to explain it over here, here we have, so this is, so like life cycle of this function, I've got two phases, and the first one is when you create a function, or like define a function, and another phase is like call a function to implement the functionality and whatever the function is designated to do. We can do this by just simply calling the function over here. You know that we need to put the parentheses and the function gets called. We have different functions as we discussed in JavaScript basics, just simple function that simply does a task like say hello and stuff like that. And we have like more dynamic functions as well, where we expect user to give a particular, or like not particular, they can give us any like argument, and a function will behave with that argument in a specific manner. So that just depends on how we define a function. But overall, you need to understand this, like this usually happens, and this happens as well. So what I'm talking about is like you create down a function over here. Let's just try to create down a function. Let's just create a medium over here, like const, say I. So this is the function, or you can say this, that we don't even need parentheses over here, like name equal to arrow, and here backticks. Now, since we know that we are writing this arrow function over here, we do not need to write down that big function with return statement over there. We just need to write this over here, like we will have hi. Now we will have a $sign over here, curly braces, and inside this we need to put this name. So this is what we're going to be having over there. Okay. So this is, and you can also like create this function. Let me just write that as well. function, say hi. So we want users to give us some argument, some dynamic argument, and let's just give it name over here. And inside this definition, this is called block of code. If you remember, we want to write down like backticks, and inside backticks, we need to have like hi, dollar, curly braces, and we can give us a name over here. So, and remember, we need to write down return as well. So this is similar to what this function is doing. We do not even need to give parentheses over here. Just simply give the name of the argument you are expecting the caller of the function to give it to you, and you're simply using that name over here with those backticks. That's how you make the function dynamic. So anyone who just implements this function over here, what they need to do, they simply need to do this, say hi, and give a name over here in quotes. Since we are passing down a string over here, will be Stacy. So that'll be like, this is how we call the functions. We got in there like parentheses, and inside the parentheses, as this function expects us to give out a name, we are giving the name. We could like call this function a lot of times with individual different names, and this will return with like hi Stacy over there. So that's like a normal process. You define a function, and that gets function used by different number of people in the world. But here, in this piece of code, what exactly is happening over here? So the creator of this for each function is already calling that function. So this flow will work in this for each. So what do I mean by this flow? So the function gets called already, and now you need to write that or create that function over here inside this for each, because the person who created for each is already using and calling the function. So what do I mean by that? So anyone who would have like created this function for each, let's just increase the size over here. So it's okay, so function for each, anyone who would have created this is the way they would have done it. So inside the for each, since they will be expecting the callers of this function to give another function, and function to be given while call. Apologies for the spec, but I just want to be clear over here that what I'm trying to explain. So this is the function. Remember, I'm not calling this function, just giving a reference to it. So this function somewhere, this for each person is using this function somewhere inside. Function to be called, to be given while call. Okay, I'm just messing up over here. To be given while call. This is not the way, this is not equivalent to what we have over here. Always remember to give like everything whatever you have given in parentheses over there, just like to demonstrate this. So whenever this for each guy who has written this or like created this for each, they are calling this with like specific values inside. So what that specific value inside is, it will be looping through, as we discussed over here. it will be looping through this individual element that we have in the node list. So in this case as well, first it will go with like container 1. Then since it is going to loop, we'll switch it, go to container 2, and then go to container 3. So as a caller, we need to be, or like as a creator of this new function, which is to be given whenever we're going to be calling this for each, we need to be mindful of the fact that we need to define or like create down a function by keeping this in our head, that we're going to be getting container 1, container 2, container 3 successively, and we have to like define a function based on that only. So that is like this flow where the function is already called and you just literally have to define the function, and that's what we are going to be doing in this for each over here. So we know that every element in this pages will be called successively with that function. So let's just go ahead and imagine that we are like creating a function with that container 1. So that means we will be getting the container 1, and how we can demonstrate that. So let's just write down page, because let's just call individual container as a page. We are getting page. And what do we want to do with that page? We want to do like page list, page dot class list dot remove. What is this all about? Let me just write down and I'll explain every bit of it. Active over here. This is what we're going to be getting back. So what this is all about? Well, we know that we are going to be getting that individual element, just like we have over there. We'll be getting individual element over there, and we are creating a function with that individual element in our mind, and we are taking that individual element, and that individual element, since we all know that everything eventually is an object under the hood, and that object seem to have like another like property or an object or which is like class list, and that class list has a function called remove, and that remove function, what we are implementing over here is like remove active. So I'm sure you must be going back to this active that we have written over there. So this remove function simply just removes the active, because since we have active in this home container, it just takes off the active from there, and you can see this class list. This will give you the list of class, just like that all 3 containers will get access to, and we simply can remove with active over there. By the way, what we can do, we can just try checking it out, that what this class list will give back to us. Let's just go ahead and put this in console over here. Console.log. So I think everything's working. Put another like parentheses over there. So everything's up and running over here. Let's go ahead and see what we get in our console. And I just made a mistake. I just forgot to add dot over here. So whenever you're trying to access some class, you need to put a dot over here. As you can see, even in CSS as well, we're accessing classes with this dot over here. As you can see, counter container, if you want to access that, it'll like with the dot over there. So I think we're all done over here. And so what we get in console, that is an important thing about contact. So why we're getting like 3 like you can see, like every time I just tap on it, it just gives us like 3 elements. So what that is, well, you need to remember this, like in the for each, the function that we are calling for each, just like in the map function, the first time is going to give us the container 1, and we'll again implement and again go through like the second time as well, because this for each uses loop inside under the hood, just like we used it in the map test function. If you remember, exactly the same way, just uses the looping functionality inside this function, and this just goes through everything whatever we have in this pages array or node list, to be specific in this specific case. So just like that, we have 3 like logs whenever we tap on any of these, like home, about, and contact. Let's just delete it. So whenever we tap, we get this 3, 1, 2, 3, because the loop goes for 3 times, because we have 3 elements in this pages node list. So I think with this being said, I'm sure it's pretty clear. Even if it's not clear, you can just write down in comment section. I'll be happy to answer. So let's just remove this log over here. Page.class list dot remove. We're going to be writing down remove, since we have access to every container, the 3 containers of this pages. So we simply need to remove active. Wherever that active is located, just remove that. So we got it over here. And next thing we need to do, we need to again get access to document, and then the function get element by ID. And this is where we need to give page ID. And you remember that this page ID is exactly similar to what we expect user, anyone who calls this function, we are expecting them to give us this page ID. In this particular case, here we'll have home, about, and contact. And here we'll be called with, if we tap on like home, we have access to home, about, and contact respectively. So here, let me again get access to class list. And now remember, since we are not using any looping functionality over here, this function will give us access to that 1 individual element. It just depends on the tab that we have tapped. Show page, if it's like home, it will give access to that home class over here. So in that, we need to add active. If that's baffling you, you'll get that after 2 minutes. Just try and write down the logic over here. So here, now we're going to be getting the access to this window object. This is like a big object that we get by default access. And here, what am I doing over here? Windows.history, big object. This might be another like property or an object related inside this bigger object.history. And here we have this function called push state. This is a function. Let's put the parentheses over there. There we go. We are calling this function. And inside this function, this expects us to give certain arguments. As you can see, inside the parentheses, just avoid this. Don't get into any detail for now. This just literally means they're using a TypeScript, just refined version of JavaScript. But for the moment, just get the hang of this, that this expects certain argument to be given. So what we can give, let's just give an empty object over here, comma. Here we gotta be giving like double quotes without any space, comma. Here put the backticks, give the $sign, or like hash, give the $sign now. Now give the curly brackets. Here we need to get the access to the page ID, which the caller will give us whenever whoever calls this function will get access to page ID, and which is simply what we are putting in to this push state arguments. Okay, so let's go ahead. I think we're all set. By the way, what this push state does, well, this push state simply is, let me just demonstrate this over here. So we know that we have over here like backwards and forward like option over here, as you can see, top left. So whenever we're going to be clicking on like about or like contact, we want to switch back and forth, right? We want to switch back and forth. Like if we hit on like about from home, you want to go back to home. If we just press this backwards, and if we click on like contact, well, we want to be going back to like about section. So what this push state is going to be doing, as you can just get the idea of it, that with this history, we are just pushing the state into the log. So what is the log? Here we go. So we visit SI, okay, of web application. So when we visit a web application, let's just demonstrate over here. Web application. We have like www.codestroll.com. So we visit a website over here, and whenever we visit a website, so website under the hood makes sure that there is like history stack. There is like a history stack in every browser, and similar to that, so whenever we visit a web application, it just logs this web address to this history address or like history stack we have over there, like www.codestroll. It does it automatically for us, browser under the hood. But if we have like a couple of tabs over there in our application, so whenever user clicks on those particular tabs, like home tab, it needs to create down another history stack over here, and that will depend on us. So we will be writing down that window.history. So by window.history, we'll be getting the access to this history stack, and on the number 2 position, we will be adding that link that we are on right now, because we got to that link after tapping on a specific tab that we had over there in our web application. So the first thing, we tap on that, just like assume it over here. We tap on like about over here. Here we go. The web address is going to get changed, and that same web address, we need to push that same web address to this history stack. For imagine like we have this Codestroll, like home tab. So this will be the web address, and we'll log that in the history, so that if anyone wants to like go back to this, we can simply go back. So now if I imagine if I like on a number 2 step over here, if I want to go back by tapping on it, I could simply go back to this over here. Or if there's like number 3, number 4, we can simply go back retrospectively wherever we were before. So that's push state is all about over here, and this is the way we go back to that page ID that we were on. Or for the moment, we are just simply logging into that history stack, the current page that we are on, because show page, if this function gets fired up, that automatically implies that we need to get that page ID to the history stack so that in the future when anyone taps on that backward button, it should go back to this page ID. Hope you understand. Let's just go ahead and let's just get out of this function because this function is already done. And here I need to get access to this window again over here, and I will add event listener. Well, events, if I tap on it like backward and forward, that's an event. So we're going to be adding that event over here. So what that event is specifically called, that is called pop state. Again, this is a function and we are giving an argument. So why we are giving only pop state? Because this pop state is whoever written this add event listener will be recognizing this exact same pop state. So here I'm going to be writing down some function. So we know that any function that gets written inside a function parentheses, that is a callback function as well. Don't get baffled by this, just watch this video, hit the pause and re-watch it again and again. You will get the hang of it. What I actually want to convey this through this in-depth video, because React.js journey will be very, very easier if you understand under the hood kind of working that's going inside this DOM manipulation and stuff like that. We'll create this exact same application using React.js, and this will be abstracted, literally like abstracted. You don't have to do any of that, just simple different logic which you'll be following, but you should get the hang of like under the hood features, and they'll give you a very solid basics as well. So let's go ahead as we have this function over here. So inside this, let me just hit enter. Let me give a variable over here, counts page, window, dot location, dot hash. Now remember, since window is like big object, this location could be some property or like another object, smaller object inside this bigger object, and this hash is like another, like an object or a property which has a replace function over here. So here I'm giving this hash sign over here, hit the comma, expects different arguments, and we're going to be giving those arguments over here. So what I'm doing over here is window.location. By the way, you could just simply log, console.log if you want to print out and are curious about what this location and what this hash is all about. You can ask AI about this, or you could just simply log it like const page, console.log and stuff like that. But here, the more important stuff is, because we know this window is some object, and then location is like an object, and then again hash is like an object, because this keeps adding up over again and again. This hash has some functionality, some function over there inside called as replace, and this replace expects like several arguments over here. So basically what we are trying to do over here, we're trying to replace this hash inside the address bar with nothing over here. As you can see, there is no space. If we just hit space, it will add some space, but we do not want to add any space over there. Or if there is like no hash over there, let's just write or. That's like a conditional statement that we are giving. If there is like no, that implies that, or if there is no hash, we want to swap it up with like home over here. So this is what I've done over here. when I hit enter, I just need to call this show page. As page, just this variable that we have created over there at the top here. We're just calling that inside page over there. So this is related to this functionality is literally related to this back and forward option. If you do not press that, this won't get activated at all. So I think we are done with this project. Let's just hit refresh. And let's just go to network. Here we go, double arrows we have. Right click. Network is the thing that we need to go. So we are getting access to index.html over here. So the moment I hit about, we have contact. As you can see, it's just getting changed up over there at the top. About, contact, and the home is also getting updated. But why our page is not getting changed? Do we need to do anything else over here? I think we home active, we push state, and here also class add active, add active. Here we go. Dot page getting access. We need to we need to flip some CSS over here, like right at the top, because that just depends on CSS, isn't it? About and contact, absolutely, that depends on CSS. So let's just flip some CSS values over there. Let's just decide what we want to get shown and what we want to hide over there. Hit enter. So I want to get access to page dot page. We all know this will allow us to fetch all the 3 containers that we got over there, or like page will get access to 2 of the containers which has the exact same page class. As you can scroll down, you can see exactly what I'm trying to convey over here. Page, this page active. You won't be getting access to like page active because this simply targets this like page. If you would have continued this like this, we still would have not got the access. We would have to write over here like dot page dash active. But so we won't get access to this page active. So what I want to do over here, I'll write down display will be none. So whenever we have like page, simple page, we don't want to show that. As you can see, we are just flipping this active, removing and adding back on over there, depending on the logic over. And that's what I want to do. And here, dot page and active. This is the way I get access to this active page dot active. This is the way I'll get access to this. The display, I want to set that to block. So what that'll do, by the way, again, you can ask AI companion what are like the different display. We are like using block display in all of the CSS elements that we are using over here. You know, we just checked out in the earlier half of our video where we talked about CSS and how we could see the margin and the padding. So that's just like demonstrate the block elements over there, but you can read about that block in detail if you want to just go to like Command L and check, and just you can simply go ahead and highlight this, add to chat, boom, it gets highlighted over there, and just write down question related to this particular context. Pretty handy. So let's just see our project if it's working the way we intend to. Okay, as you can see, so we are getting this over here. So that get about and contact is like totally removed over there, and we do not have anything. If I hit on contact, here we go, it goes back. You can see the address right at the top is changing, but we do not see any change over there. No request is going to the server because this is the single page code that we have written. And we hit on about, again, this changes up to about, no change over there. And by the way, let's just go ahead and see if this backward is working or not. This is like the pop state, the event listener that we added in the window object, hit backwards. As you can see, changes up to contact, working fine. Our history stack is like constantly getting fired up whenever we tap on either of those buttons over there. Again, home, about, contact, go back, about. The counter seemed to be working as well. Contact. So if you have any questions regarding this, I gave my all to this. If I missed out anything, just let me know in the comment section as well. And by the way, you can make your code look more cleaner, I would say. Just make sure that you ask this to AI that how can I make my code cleaner, because when you hit Command B, that will bring back the navigation over here. We have just one file over here. Wouldn't it be great if we just create a separate CSS file for this and take this out of like styling part that we have over here, and we can refer to the link like index.css or like index.javascript over here. We could make this more cleaner, but this is the way to make you understand how the single page code is written. Again, Command B, just so that we have more space over here. But this is a way, like, just go through this code over and over again, and if you have any problem, you could just shoot down a question in the comment section, or you could just fire up a question to your AI Command L. You can get all the answers. And if I talk about this small logic over here, I'm sure it's just overwhelming for the first time, for first-timers, and but the moment you go through it again and again, just try to get into that, what makes me add or remove, all the magic that's happening over here. And that history thing is pushing us, say, to the history, and then this and this line of code is totally related to that backwards and forward button where the states get add up over there. Well, I think we are done with the video over here. Whatever we wanted to achieve, we have achieved that. You need to compare it with our part 1 as well, where we talked about the multi-page approach, and here we talked about single-page approach using vanilla JavaScript. So if you like the content, takes a lot of time and effort, do make sure that you smash that like button, share, and subscribe to the channel, as that's the only thing that will make the channel stand out in the crowd. Well, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.